Congressman, thank you so much for being here with us.
Absolutely.
Water is something that we're certainly passionate about. Right when we kicked off the event, our Vice President, Amy Liu, asked how many people in the room work in the water industry, and it was a huge range of hands. So you are looking at a water crowd here.
Fellow nerds, I love it.
Yeah. Oh, you've come to the right place, Congressman. But I think it's safe to say there are few, if maybe any, leaders here in Washington where water resources is a more personal part of both your personal life and your professional life, right? So I think there's no better way to kick off the conversation here than to kind of start on that personal level, right? From both your experience post-Katrina, working on cleanup there, obviously the work here. Talk to us really in that kind of personal way, right? Putting policy, even politics to the side. Why are water resources so important, right? To small towns, to large cities, to rural areas, and of course to protecting our natural environment too.
Sure. So first, I think to answer the question, let's talk about what water resources are. A lot of people may have maybe a smaller view of what water resources are. I'm from South Louisiana, where we drain from Montana to New York to 2 Canadian provinces. So when you talk water resources in Louisiana, we have too much of it. It's often in our living rooms. And we also are having a threat from the south in that we have hurricanes that are coming in and sending surges of water that way. Now that's very much distinguished from water resource issues as you may be talking about out west, whereby it is, I don't have water to drink or don't have clean water or other challenges along those lines. And so in South Louisiana at home, some of the challenges that I've had personally have been dealing with Hurricane Katrina, which I want to say I think was largely a preventable event, not entirely, but largely a preventable event. By some measure, you can justify that we spent somewhere around $150 to $180 billion responding to that hurricane and the other hurricane, Hurricane Rita, that we had in 2005 back to back. $150 to $180 billion. Think about that for just a minute. Our back of the envelope calculations indicate that we could have spent somewhere around 8 to 10 billion on the front end, and we could have saved 90% of the 1,500 lives that were lost. Think about that for just a minute. 90%. We also could have saved 90% of that money. And so it's personal for me because I will tell you, I have this guilt on me that I feel like that I should have done more, and I don't think I'm ever in my life going to lose it. And so one of the things that I committed to was to make sure that we never allowed anything like that to happen again. And so after Hurricane Katrina, we came in and we were able to pull together through about 42 different funding sources, about $25 billion. And we built levees, we built flood walls, we elevated homes and buildings, we restored our coast, we acquired coastal forest, one of the best natural barriers for storm surge, put together a coastal master plan that really is on the cutting edge of technology and using every single tool in the toolbox that we could find, and brought together some of the best scientists from around the world to do it. And so we made more progress in about a 6-year period than really any 40-year period prior to that. We integrated all of our structural and non-structural, our levees and flood walls, again with our wetlands restoration and restoring natural features all into one program, which allowed us to really make extraordinary progress down there. We still have a lot of work to do, but I can say now that in the greater New Orleans area, we have the best protection system. We have the most resilient community that we've ever had down there. But this is a dynamic issue. Sea rise, we have some of the fastest subsidence rates in the world in South Louisiana. This is not a deal where you say, okay, I'm in the end zone, I'm done. This is a process that you just continue to work on. So lastly, I'll just say, as I opened up, I talked about how we think we could have spent 8 to 10 billion on the front end. I feel very strongly that our water resources program in the United States is entirely backwards. And whether you want to talk about water rights, you want to talk about water management, you want to talk about navigation, or you want to talk about disaster policy, we repeatedly spend exponentially more money after a disaster happens rather than spending a fraction on the front end and actually being proactive. And by the way, when you're proactive, you have more resilient communities, more resilient economy, more resilient environment, and we're missing those opportunities. But we're beginning to pivot.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a perfect transition to what you got going on right now. So we are huge fans here at Brookings in general to say Washington does work, you could probably walk around with that banner right now in D.C. A Water Resources Development Act that had over 400 yes votes. Is that right?
408 with only 2 no votes, but who's counting?
Yeah, right. It really is an excellent record of success on the power of what's in that bill. But let's take the kind of high level view that I think you just did wonderfully on why this matters personally to you. What were you all hoping to achieve, right? And then we can probably dive into some specific elements, or you can yourself. But what do you want that bill to achieve, touching on some of those challenges that you see both in Louisiana and across the country?
So the Water Resources Development Act primarily deals with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And we used to say behind their backs all the time, they may be slow, but at least they're expensive. Which it is funny. It is, but here's the thing. These are real repercussions on real people. So right now the Corps of Engineers has a $100 billion backlog on authorized projects, $100 billion. And Congress, the White Houses, and I want to be clear, plural, this transcends various administrations, have asked for around $1 billion in construction funds. Now, Congress comes in and we bump those numbers up, but whether you're talking $1 billion or when Congress comes in and bumps it to $2 billion, look, it doesn't take a math expert. You have a $100 billion backlog of authorized projects. You're getting $1 to $2 billion in funding. You do the math, add inflation, you'll finish approximately never. You're not going to finish it. And so decades ago, a Corps of Engineers authorization by the Congress meant something. It meant that your project was actually going to progress. And now I'm concerned that it's become more of a press release and then a death sentence, because right now, though we have other various programs in the federal government like community development block grant, recovery dollars, flood mitigation dollars, FEMA mitigation dollars, you're prohibited from spending any of those other funds on a core project. The project has had greater environmental scrutiny, greater cost to benefit analyses, and technical feasibility and other things. You're prohibited. If these are important projects and they're important to the nation and they've been authorized by the Congress and recommended by the administration, we need to be prioritizing these and putting all the funds together. We don't need to be putting all these impediments or roadblocks in place. So what the Water Resources Development Act does is it begins laying the groundwork for a faster implementation process, a more efficient implementation process, allowing counties, parishes, states, and other non-federal entities to partner better with the Corps of Engineers to actually get these projects built. When I was doing this work in Louisiana and building these projects, we routinely were able to build projects for 1/2 to 1/3 the cost of the Corps of Engineers. So you have everybody out there, the president and others, talking about an infrastructure package. And when you do that, people often talk about money. Oh, we need to dump a whole bunch of money into this. And yes, we need more resources, but if we're able to replicate some of these efficiencies that we demonstrated in Louisiana on a broader scale, you can build 2 or 3 times as many projects for the same cost. Let's look at this process by which we're developing these projects and implementing these projects and figure out how to squeeze some of the efficiencies out. Last thing, and something that I think is a big deal in there, we begin laying the groundwork for taking a fresh look at the Corps of Engineers. Because think for just a minute if the president came to you right now and said, hey, I want you to develop a water resources capability within our federal government. I want you to develop something that maintains our navigation channels and protects our wetlands and builds levees to protect our communities and other water resource missions. How many agents, and it said, and give me a recommendation of where this is going to go. How many agencies would you go through in the federal government before you got to the Department of Defense? And they said, yeah, this is where we're going to do it. Perfect fit. I mean, really. Secretary Mattis, North Korea, China, Russia, cybersecurity, national defense. I want him focused on that. I don't want him also saying, oh, we got to look at this wetlands permit again. No, it's incompatibility with mission, which I think has resulted in slow and expensive, the joke that I made earlier. And so this needs to be a priority within an agency. It needs to be a cabinet level priority to where when there are problems, you can have a leader step in and say, yes, I've got time, I've got bandwidth, and I've got compatibility in my mission and priorities to take this and actually fix this and not allow a mission or an agency as critical as this to devolve into a $100 billion backlog to where many in Congress say, I'm not sure this is a good investment.
Right. We love those kind of innovative ideas here. I was taken this morning, as probably many of you were when you opened the newspaper, that your former colleague in the House, Congressman Mulvaney, right, announced that there might be proposals about merging agencies, right? we're obviously in public here a little bit, but if you could speak just frankly, right? What do you think the tolerance will be? Not for that, I mean, that's not so. I'm saying, what do you think the tolerance could be? What do you think the attitudes will be in Washington to even just have a debate, right, about maybe moving the Army Corps and its approach to potentially somewhere else within the federal infrastructure?
I think it needs to happen, and I think that there is. I think that there is or will be a tolerance there. Now, look, it really depends on the actual recommendation, because I think you take something like this and you start explaining it to people. I think that, hey, look, we think this would fit better in Department of Transportation, that's an infrastructure agency, or the Department of Interior that has Bureau of Reclamation and already has some water expertise, or there are other agencies where you can find better compatibility. And so you take an idea like that, yeah, I think you can get support for it. But obviously, you can come up with some other ideas that I think are going to run into brick walls. But the idea that we do take a fresh look at our government and figure out how do we reinvent this, or what does a 2018 or perhaps a 2030 government structure look like? It's something we absolutely need to do. So my first foray into working in the executive branch is when I went down to Louisiana after Hurricane Katrina. And I remember looking around, and one of the first conversations I had in the first 2 weeks I was there, I was like, Governor, we have 5 agencies that are tripping all over each other. And of course, the initial response, as you would expect, oh, no, you're wrong, you don't understand. And so I said, look, let me see if I can put some information together and come back. All right, yeah, whatever, just get out. And so I did put some information together and came back and said, look at this, we're tripping all over each other. And they're like, oh, wow, actually, you know what? Maybe there's some merit to this. And they led us to a reorganization. 5 agencies blew up components of them, rebuilt them, and that's what I mentioned earlier. 42 funding streams that previously had been managed in a disparate manner, pulled them together and began implementing a mission. Now, something else that we did, and this is something, it's one of those things like, oh, yeah, government has a monopoly. Think about it if you were in the Olympics right now and you were in a race and you were the only person in the lane. Or do you really think you're going to get your PR, your personal record, running by yourself? No, you have somebody running next to you and running next to you and running next to them and next to them. You're going to feel that competition. You're going to be running harder. You're going to be your best. And I think that in some cases, this government monopoly allows for a little bit more lackadaisical attitudes, a little bit less efficiency, a little bit less innovation. So one of the things we did when I got there is I said, all right, look, we're going to put these projects out, and we're going to let local levy districts or parishes or other sister agencies actually come in and bid on these projects. And if they can build it better, faster, cheaper, we're giving them the money. And we did. We gave away the money for, I think, the first 2 projects we did. And of course, the people that were working in our agency, wait a minute, I've been working on this for 8 years, and you just gave it away. Like, yep, we did, because they had a better proposal. And I'll tell you, just overnight, woke folks up, and we ended up increasing output. I think it was like 500% increase in output by taking the same funding streams, pulling them together, and forcing a little bit of competition into the system. So my point is I think, look, taking a fresh look at government structure, how to integrate a little bit of competition here, I think it's healthy, because otherwise you get complacent. Missions that perhaps could be eliminated with technology and others, they're not. If people just justify their jobs and say, well, look, I've been here since 1980 and I need to stay and develop a role for my position, I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah. No, we couldn't agree more. I think the ability to innovate and think outside the box and a little bit of competition is a good thing. And I think there's real potential there. We are huge fans of WordOf. I think we hope it moves through the Senate. I think there's a lot of real innovation in there. One of the elements that we didn't see, which I know people are passionate about, so it's no insult at all. It's not intended that way. Was workforce, and there's a lot of talk in Washington, just broadly, right, on workforce. How do we think about apprenticeships? Let's say what can be the renewed federal role, right? So let's assume it's we're a year from now. Word has passed. We're thinking about the next iteration, right? How do you view, and obviously you're passionate about education too, right, Congressman? So how do we view merging these kind of sectors? Not necessarily just water, but it can be infrastructure broadly, but the opportunity here from the federal level down, even though it's going to be a lot of bottom up, frankly, this opportunity to merge the skilled trades with the need for more economic opportunity for Americans looking for really good, well-paying work.
So I think it's a great question, and I think right now it's something that you're seeing a lot of attention on right now. So we're seeing a growing economy. We're seeing lower unemployment right now. And so you now see sort of the bottleneck or the things that are throttling the economy. I think 2 things. Number one, it's workforce. because we don't have the right compatibility of skills with the jobs that are available. And you can look at statistics all over the country, and virtually every state shows this. You have people that are looking for jobs. You have jobs that are available, but they're not connected because in most cases, I think the compatibility of skills. And so you've got that, and then on infrastructure, you've got a lack of infrastructure, I think, that to facilitate the growing economy. So those are the two things that are throttling our economy right now. On the education side, I think that as many of you know, much better than I do, I think we pushed everyone and told everyone that your end zone's a 4-year degree or an advanced degree, when in reality, in the state of Louisiana and many other states, those aren't the skills or the qualifications that many of the employers are looking for right now. They're looking for skilled labor. They're looking for certifications, accreditations, and others. And so now we're trying to catch up. So I'm going to merge these ideas here. So I talked earlier about how we're being too reactive in our water resource policy in disasters. And so what happens is we have a major disaster, we dump absurd amounts of money into them. And so you create this surge of jobs associated with recovering from Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita, Hurricane Gustav and Ike in 2008, Hurricane Sandy and Isaac in 2012, Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Nate last year. But that was 2005, 2008, 2012, 2017. That's not a consistent job that you're just sitting there doing. If we can lean forward, be a little bit more proactive on this. This is an industry. Water resources is an industry. And I think if we're able to better resource this, to be proactive, and to have this as instead of spending, again, $150, $180 billion in 2005, having another surge of funds in 2017 where we're hitting similar levels, that's not a job you can sit in for 10 years. That's, hey, I just got this great job for a year, I got paid a bunch of money, but now I'm out of work for a year and a half and I'm trying to find something else. So being more consistent with our appropriation of dollars, leaning forward and identifying where the vulnerabilities are, and just being proactive. You create a sustainable industry, a sustainable workforce. In the state of Louisiana, when I was working there, I recognized that we were effectively creating a new industry in Louisiana. We're sort of the canary in the coal mine with the subsidence and the sea rise challenges and the sustainability of our communities. 2 million people live in South Louisiana, and it's 65% of our state's economy. And so we created a water institute, the Water Institute of the Gulf, a not-for-profit entity, to be a partner with the state of Louisiana, to sort of work on the expertise, the center of excellence, to help develop the workforce for the future and make sure that we're applying best science and lessons learned and everything else. And I think that was really compatible with the job creation part. And as a result, and I don't know what the statistic is now, but when I was leaving that job, we had more jobs associated with water resources and sustainability, community sustainability, than anywhere else in the country, in South Louisiana, not Manhattan or LA, South Louisiana. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and we are proud to say our research found that is the highest share in the country, and yeah, well aligned perfectly. Look, I've had the luxury here of asking most of the questions. I'd love to get a chance to turn to a question in the crowd, but it's my responsibility. We're here in Washington. It's post the election when both candidates talked about infrastructure. We were promised infrastructure, Congressman, and obviously you delivered. And we know that there's been a pretty lively debate around aviation, right? And I think I say it in a lowercase informal way. It's kind of stalled, right? But I'm saying it's out there. Yeah. But let's talk about the big package, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever it might be. What's going on the Hill? What do you think the chances are? We know we've got a big election coming in a few months here, right? Can we expect to see anything before then? What do you think the tenor is up there?
Well, so look, certainly out there in the public, the demand for an infrastructure package is strong, and it's something that actually, when you talk about it at the 100,000-foot level, it has broad bipartisan support. When you start digging into what infrastructure is, I think you begin understanding that people have very different definitions. I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. If we were able to repeatedly demonstrate in the state of Louisiana that we could build water resource projects for 1/3 to 1/2 the cost of what the Corps estimated, I'm not a fan of coming in and dumping mounds and mounds of cash on that existing inefficient system. I think the first thing we need to do is take a step back, look at what is it about our current project development and delivery models that have such great inefficiency.
Right.
And let's first work on helping to solve those problems. Let's help on doubling the output of projects with the existing funding stream. Then come in and begin resourcing that better, and putting more funds into it. So rather than coming in and doing this, gazillion-dollar package that some people talked about, the Speaker of the House said, look, what we're going to do is we're actually going to break this up into components. And so back on December 21st and again in April, we passed a disaster reform bill that if you look at it, it actually has infrastructure dollars in there. And it begins this shift from entirely reactive and inflexibility to leaning forward and being more proactive and providing resources. So there's a disaster infrastructure bill moving. You mentioned the FAA bill that we did in April, H.R. 4, so that bill is moving. And the Senate, I'm not sure exactly what their strategy is over there, and I think I can say that across the board. But, nobody's here to defend them. We'll just,
there you go.
No. So seriously, from what I hear, though, they may be taking up aviation together with disaster some point next month, I think. So one of the many rumors out there. But aviation infrastructure is to some degree moving. Then, of course, the water resources bill that we did a few weeks ago, that one's moving. And Chairman Schuster, the chairman of the Transportation Committee, ranking member DeFazio of the Transportation Committee, they're going to be introducing a joint bill that's a little bit broader in scope, largely roads, bridges, and I think that it's going to be pretty thought-provoking legislation as well. So look, rather than coming in and doing one huge package right now, we're looking at breaking up into smaller bite-sized chunks. I don't see this as being if we split it up into 4 or 8 bits, I don't see it even being pulled together and being a silver bullet. I think that this is going to be an evolution where we come in a few years and have to continue making progress. One of the strategies that we employed on the water resources bill that I think yielded the type of success that you don't see in Washington is we agreed on a bipartisan bill as soon as we went into it. So we're not putting anything in here that doesn't have support from Republicans and Democrats on our committee. And the vote yielded that or demonstrated the strong support for the bill and the bipartisan support. And so, look, do I believe, me personally in a vacuum, that there were some missed opportunities in the bill? Yeah, I do. But I also believe that us working together on this and having bipartisan support is really important.
Right. Well, compromise means someone always gives something up, but the whole package gets more, right? So it's promising to see. Well, listen, I think we have time for at least one question. Are you comfortable taking one?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
great.
it's easy.
All right, good. Remember, you got a water crowd here, so let's see what happens. All right, so in the back. And please, while the mic's coming to you, please introduce yourself. And as is standard Brookings protocol, please just make sure with what you say it ends with a question mark.
Yes, my name is Ann Solkowski. I have no background in the water infrastructure, but my question is there any talk on the Hill about the desalinization of ocean waters and the infrastructure to transport it to areas with low aquifers?
There is talk about it. As you know, desalinization is incredibly expensive. And so as technology gets better, because as we all know, the cost of desal has dropped significantly it's still much higher than other solutions, but desalinization is a tool that's in the tool chest. It is something that we've talked about. In fact, I was in a meeting just recently where they were talking about, is there an opportunity for us to take some of the flare gas, some of the gas that's being flared, and figure out, is there a way to pull that together to do desalinization and a way to help try and solve two problems and bring down costs and things along those lines. So look, just like I talked earlier about coastal Louisiana and there being multiple tools in the toolkit, I think the desal is one of those tools that, while it is not necessarily the most cost-efficient solution, in some cases it still is the best option. And so I think that it's going to continue to play a role in overall water supply, but I also think that we need to continue to work to help to bring down cost to make it a more affordable option in many areas. But over the long term, you look at trends in population growth and water availability and things, we've got to get good at desal. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. Please join me in thanking the Congressman both for his time and for his candor here, too.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more videos from Brookings.